OST 2016. This is interviews, music reviews, and more. This is The Hodder Show.
What is up, everybody? We are on audio here today on episode 363 of The Hodder Show. I hope you guys are doing absolutely fantastic. Thank you so very much for tuning in and clicking that play button on today's episode of the podcast. We've got another fun edition of the albums that made me here on The Hodder Show. A little segment I like to do in which I break down an album that was, in my opinion, crucial not only to myself as a music fan and a true lover of music, but also really that kind of helped me grow as a person. And I go back and revisit these albums and their lyrics and things like that as an adult, because obviously these are albums I heard when I was younger, mostly in my, teenage years. So it's fun to go back and dive into this. And this one is really interesting because I think out of all the albums I've done so far, this album is one that going back to, I really can appreciate from the standpoint of how it helped me grow as a person without really realizing it. And that, of course, is Stain's breakthrough 2001 record, Break the Cycle. It's a killer record, and I dissect it from top to bottom, talking about what the songs meant to me and little stories behind them, if there are stories behind them, of course. We also find out a little bit about the recording process of the album and things like that. And I also talk, of course, about how I got into Stain, as I like to talk about how I got into the bands, a little bit of stuff behind the scenes, and then break down each song, and then what the record meant to me overall here on the albums that made me. This is going to be a fun one. But before we jump into that, I need to take a quick second here, because last week was the 7th year anniversary of The Hodder Show. And unfortunately, as these things happen in life, especially lately for me, unfortunately, I was unable to do an episode. However, I wanted to just take a second and just say thank you, because the growth that the show saw last year in its 6th year was incredible. A lot of great things happened. As with life, there were also some pretty harsh downs with those ups in regards to the show. But overall, 2022 was an incredible year for the show. And now being 7 years in, still having the support that I do, having the growing support that I do, is just incredible. And doing new things on the show, like the first listen that we did earlier in January. These albums that made me segments are still fairly new. I've only done a few of them so far. It's fun to be able to still grow as a podcaster and as a creator. And I think that is something that I'm going to always continue to do. This show is not pigeonholed to one thing. I've never wanted that. I know that in the opinion of some people in the industry, if I were to ask, they would probably say that's what holds me back, because people might tune in expecting one thing and then they get something else. But this show is a look into my brain and how I work and my interests in life. And I talk about things that I'm passionate about and that I love and enjoy. I am going to be getting back to doing interviews. I assure you all that is going to happen. Hopefully, like within the next couple of weeks, I'll be getting back to doing interviews. Just unfortunately, with my work schedule, doing interviews has been very tricky. But I've got a few fantastic guests lined up to kind of start off the year with a bang. As far as with full interviews, of course, the first listen with my boy Chris was kind of sort of an interview, not really. But very excited about that. I will be getting back to interviews. And if there's content that you guys would like to hear from me, let me know too. Because that's something over the last 7 years I've always strived to do, which is provide an environment that is fun and hopefully entertaining, lighthearted and positive, but also content that you guys want to potentially hear from me. And I strive to also maybe at times have some kind of real conversations. And that's something that today, definitely there's going to be some real conversation happening as we dive into this edition of the albums that made me, featuring Stain's Break the Cycle, as this album does deal a lot with things of that nature. Before we jump in head first, though, we're going to take a quick second to hear a word from the sponsors who are helping The Hodder Show grow. Let's check it out. So, a central theme here on the albums that made me is something that I like to do where I go back and will, as an adult now, and we'll see how albums affected me. Really, maybe without me even realizing it. And it's funny because this in particular record, Break the Cycle by Staind, which we are covering here today, of course, I didn't realize just how heavy some of the lyrical content was. I knew that Aaron Lewis had a not so great upbringing, and then he tackled a lot of that in his music. I always knew that. I always loved and appreciated Aaron's just brutal honesty and passion. But to go back now as an adult who is always learning, who is always trying to grow emotionally, it's a really heavy record. Which is why this is so interesting for me to go back and break down, because so far, we've done Year of the Spider by Kolb, which is another really heavy record in its own right, lyrically. But I kind of understood that because I got into Kolb when I was a little older. Obviously, Seether's Karma & Effect with Garrett, another record going back and looking at some of the lyrics, making me realize, again, as an adult, because I heard that record when I was a teenager, oh, here's why this made a difference to me. Here's why this affected me the way it did. At the time, I think I realized some of the songs did why they affected me in that way. But then even songs like when I did Godsmack's Awake record here on the Albums That Made Me, I didn't really truly realize lyrically what some of those songs meant and why I gravitated towards them so much. So I can't stress enough how much fun this is to get to go back and pick through some of these records and kind of almost be not surprised, but just like, oh, that's why I played this song on repeat so much. Like, oh, okay, I get it. And being hopefully emotionally mature enough to, not mature in general, of course, let me stress that very much. I am a very immature person, but over the last couple of years, I've really tried to grow emotionally, if you will, and try to understand things and things of that nature. But enough of that talk. We'll get into all that when we break down some of the songs, because first and foremost, I want to talk about how I got into Staind, and it's actually kind of an interesting story, because I got into Staind, like a lot of people, through Limp Bizkit, which you might be scratching your heads and say, you got into Staind because of Limp Bizkit? Well, what some people may not know is before Staind hit it big, they were buddies with Fred Durst. Fred Durst heard some of their stuff and really liked, mainly he loved Aaron's voice and he liked the sonic sound of Staind. So he got them involved with Flip Records, which was his record label he was with. Flip Giffen Records, however you say it. And Fred did that a lot with a lot of bands. And he's really responsible for some of these bands making it big. Especially bands like Puddle of Mudd, Staind. I think Staind would have probably made it big anyway. But definitely Puddle of Mudd, he helped out a lot in the beginning too. But when I was introduced to Staind, it was because one day was when YouTube really just kind of started to hit it off and really started to get popular. I would spend a full day just surfing through YouTube, watching live videos and stuff like that. Not so much like content like videos and music videos, but like just live performances. I loved doing that. It's something I still enjoy doing, but when I was, 15, 16, like, oh, that's all I would do. And younger too. But I got into Limp Bizkit, I would say grade 8 into grade 9 was when I first, was introduced to like Rollin' and stuff like that, obviously. And the Hot Dog Flavored Water, that record, which I still love that record to this day. But when I discovered YouTube, I would look up some of my favorite bands. And one day I was on YouTube and I was looking for Limp Bizkit stuff. And for some reason I searched Fred Durst. I'm not sure why, but I did. And I saw this video pop up that said Outside featuring Fred Durst. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, what's this? Clicked on it. And my life was really never the same. And that was because I heard Staind's Outside for the first time. Now, this was the version that most people are familiar with, which was Aaron Lewis performing it live and acoustically with Fred Durst at Family Values tour. That performance literally changed the game for me because I had never really heard a performance that moved me like that. At the time, I was a huge fan of Nickelback, and I think at that point I was into Godsmack and Seether. I think my timeline might be a little askew there, but I think right around that time that the timelines are a little blurry because it was a long time ago and I'm an old man, but it was right around that same time period. I got into a lot of these bands and it really changed the game for me, man. Just his voice is so powerful. To this day, it's still powerful. And I remember just being so moved by just this acoustic guitar, people screaming lyrically, like it just really stood out to me. And from there, man, Aaron Lewis has been a constant in my life. Staind has been a constant in my life. And they're extremely important band to me. But who are Staind? Well, Staind is, of course, an American rock band, if you will, from Springfield, Massachusetts. And they actually formed in 1995. And originally, and for this main record, and their biggest records, let's be honest, the lineup consisted of lead vocalist and acoustic/rhythm guitarist Aaron Lewis, lead guitarist Mike Mushok, bassist and backing vocalist Johnny April, or Johnny Old School, and drummer at the time, John Wysocki. And I'm probably just butchered his last name, but his name's John. They were together for a long time too, from 1995 to 2011, when the drummer John left and was replaced by Sal, who was actually his drum tech for a long time. So he was already in the Staind family. And it's interesting because so far all of Staind's records were recorded with John, including their latest record, which is 2011's self-titled Staind record, which is amazing. But I can still remember when I got a message from, actually shouts to Brandon Bowden Voice, hit me up and was like, dude, did you hear? And I was like, what? He says, John Wysocki left Staind. And I was like, huh? He's like, man, those guys have been together forever. And I was like, what? Like, I remember being so shocked. But come to find out, him and Aaron had a not so stable relationship for a very long time. So it's not surprising that he left. But the 7 studio albums that they have currently, that they have recorded, which apparently they're working on another one, which really excites me. There's their kind of quote unquote debut record, Tormented, which is a very heavy record. And if you can look it up on YouTube, I implore you to do so. Because you might be like, huh? This is the same band that recorded It's Been a While. Their actual major label debut, Dysfunction, which is a fantastic record that's also very important to me. Break the Cycle, of course. 14 Shades of Grey. Chapter 5, which 14 Shades of Grey and Chapter 5 are 2 other records I love. The Illusion of Progress, and then the self-titled 2011 record, Staind. So Break the Cycle was their 3rd studio album, and it was released through Electrica Entertainment and Flip Records in 2001. It's pretty safe to say that it is Staind's most successful album to date and probably their most popular, and it's really what kind of broke them into the mainstream. It was a huge international success for the band as it spent 3 weeks at #1 position in the US album charts and many weeks in the top 10 album charts on the Billboard 200 in the UK, New Zealand, all over the world, including Canada. It sold at least 4 million copies in 2001. The album was certified 5 times platinum, and it sold over 1 million copies in its first month. How awesome would it be to get back to that, eh? Like just be able to sell 1 million records in 1 month. Like, do people even sell 1 million records anymore? Like, I don't remember the last time I heard that. The album was produced by Josh Abraham, who has done several major records. He's a big producer. And it was actually recorded at several different studios, which is interesting, including Electric Ladyland, NRG Studios, Longview Farm Studios, and South Beach Studios. Because of this and a few other reasons, the record had a budget of $800,000, which is insane. There were a lot of worries as to whether or not the album would be successful. The album basically had to be a chart topper just to break even on the studio costs themselves. So that's a lot of pressure. But because of that pressure, Break the Cycle debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 with its first week sales at 717,000, over 1,707,000 records. This is what happens when the studio puts what should happen when the studio puts a lot of money into something. They should push it. And also, they released It's Been a While as the first single, if I'm not mistaken, but I can check that in a little bit here. And that just skyrocketed sales as well. It remained at the top of the charts the following week, selling over 329,000 copies. In the third week, it was number 1 again, selling over 244,000 copies. In the fourth week, it dropped to number 2 with 221,000 copies. It sold over 1 million copies in 3 weeks. Needless to say, the album was a humongous success, and there's a reason why when you talk about Staind, a lot of people look at the record because of things like that, because those songs were all over the radio. I mean, It's Been a While is still all over the radio. You don't hear Outside on the radio as much anymore, but definitely It's Been a While. I mean, it's been a while since I've heard it, but I'm sorry. I won't do that again, I promise. Spoiler alert, I'm going to say it again later. But it's such a great record, and a lot of people, this era of music is really, what's the best way to put this? This era of music is memed a lot. And I hate that because people are like, oh, like this era is just like whiny bullshit, which don't get me wrong. There's a lot of that from this time period, but stuff like this is not whiny bullshit. If you, I think, are emotionally mature and can pay attention to what's actually being said, there's a huge difference. And a central theme that I'm going to talk about a lot as we jump into the track by track here is getting through trauma and dealing with trauma. And this whole record is basically Aaron Lewis purging himself of his past traumas and trying to get past it. And that's why it's such a powerful record. And that's why, again, as I stressed a few times here already, looking back at it now as an adult, it's like, holy shit, this is a heavy record. And we're going to find that as we jump into the track by track here. So I've spoken a lot on my podcast, specifically on the Music Showcase episodes, of course, about the importance of starting off an album with a strong song. No matter how great your overall album is, the first song needs to hook people. It's not so much important nowadays, I guess. A lot of bands are going the way of just playing singles and things like that. But I'm still a fan of albums. And when I review an EP or an album, and the first song I hear, if it doesn't hook me, I'm just kind of like, You know what I mean? It's just like, what else you got? And you can have a really strong second song, third song, doesn't matter. Back in the day, you needed to have a great opening for your record. And starting off Break the Cycle is Open Your Eyes, which is a song that is as much social commentary as it is kind of a powerful message about the state of the world at the time through Aaron Lewis's eyes. It's a song that I never really enjoyed that much until I got out into the world, seeing the darkness in the world. It kind of makes the song stand out, which is kind of interesting, just seeing how much things have changed now. This is really the first time that Aaron Lewis had a bit of a political statement in a song, which is funny considering where he is now with his country music and how outspoken he is and everything. He got more into that with 14 Shades of Grey, The Illusion of Progress specifically. There's a very political song called Rainy Day Parade. So, it's not something he's ever shied away from per se, but this is definitely the first time that we got to hear it. And Open Your Eyes is, it's got a great riff. It's a good little opener song. It's definitely not my favorite song on the record, but it's a fantastic open and a song that I really now understand a lot more as an adult. So definitely a great way to open up the record. Lyrically speaking, the next song on the record, Pressure, is really one of the heaviest songs on the record. Mike punching in with that riff and the covering fire that's laid down by John and Johnny in the rhythm section really drive the song forward. I think for me, I used to skip over Open Your Eyes and just start the record at Pressure, to be honest with you, because it's such a powerful, heavy song. And there's a lot of a theme on this record, as I've already spoken a little bit about, and Stain's overall work with Aaron, kind of working through his trauma and his issues. Clearly, Pressure almost seems like a bit of a diary page from Aaron and his struggle with his mental health and the use of prescriptions to aid him. I think almost anyone can relate to the chorus of the song. Can't see through this, too much pressure, drowning in this, too much pressure. I know at times in my life where I've been blasting this song to kind of purge those feelings, those anxieties of life and the pressure that either we may put on ourselves as people or pressures we're feeling from outside sources and things of that nature. I think pretty much everyone can relate to that one way or another. And now I find I gravitate towards this song a lot for that reason, because it is a very good song to purge those anxieties, if you will. Fade is a really interesting song on the record, and it was a pretty big single. I think it was the third single on the record, and it got to be a pretty big little song. It had a fun little video, and instrumentally, it's a very cool song, mixing the cool heavy chorus with the clean guitars, the coarse clean guitars, the smooth bass work and the drum work. It's a really interesting song from Stained, because I think mainly what stands out to me is the coarse heavy guitar work in the verses and stuff like that. I think that really stands out to me because it's not something we ever really heard from Mike Mushok before. And then obviously, come on, Aaron's performance, specifically on that soaring chorus, is just, it's huge. It's massive, absolutely massive. I think that's a great example of when you look at bands from that era, one thing that always stood out to me was those soaring choruses. That's something that it can be pinpointed to that era, because I feel like that's what a lot of music has lost that nowadays. Those big soaring choruses that just, hooks are still around, obviously, but a lot of bands don't have those big soaring choruses anymore. And lyrically, Aaron Lewis has described the song about being about parental neglect, namely his belief that parents on the whole have kind of forgotten how to be parents. He explained in an interview that the lyrics of the song, mainly obviously the chorus, "I just needed someone to talk to, you were just too busy with yourself," were about him feeling as if he had no one to turn to while growing up as a child. And that's something he's always really spoken about a lot. And, as he got older and having children at home who maybe may have felt the same way, realized kind of the correlation between those and kind of purging himself of that. Now, personally, I can't relate to not having anyone to talk to or anything in my parental life because I had wonderful parents growing up. But aside from that, the way I always took this from my own personal experience, that's what's so great about music, is, I did have some time when I did deal with my bullying issues when I was younger, that I did feel like I didn't have anyone to talk to, and out of worries of making it worse. So And it did feel like sometimes people around me would just not, they either would join in or they just wouldn't really care, or they wouldn't acknowledge it or see it. And that's how I took the song. And that's what's so beautiful about music. You know, I had a wonderful life growing up, but as an adult, I can definitely appreciate someone being in that situation. And I can look at it from my standpoint as to why I did relate to this song in my own way. All right, guys. So it's been a while since we've talked about this track here on the show. Okay, I'm really sorry. All dumb joke. I promise I'm not going to make a joke ever again, or at least for the rest of this episode. All dumb jokes aside, It's Been a While is Stain's biggest hit for a reason. It's a song that is always interesting to me, and this is how I've always taken it. It's a kind of a cathartic love song in which Aaron is not only kind of working through his own trauma and issues, but also he's professing his love for someone and how they make him feel and how they make him feel better and like a human being. I think everyone can relate to this song lyrically in one way or another. From a commercial standpoint, it's been their biggest song since it came out, being the only song of theirs to reach the top 10 on the Billboard mainstream chart, peaking at number 5. So that's the actual like mainstream pop charts. It also had staying power as a number 1 single on basically all of rock radio. And it became number 1 all over the world on rock radio when it came out. And it's interesting with this song because Aaron actually wrote it. It's one of the songs on the record that if you look in the liner notes, it was solely written by Aaron Lewis because he wrote it while he was performing acoustically under the name J-Cat. But he shelved it until 2000 when they were recording the record. To go back for a second with the working through trauma and issues like that, there's obviously a lot of lyrics I could pinpoint, but I mean, to go take a look at even really the second verse just, on its own. And it's been a while since I can say that I wasn't addicted. It's been a while since I can say I love myself as well. And it's been a while since I've gone and fucked things up just like I always do. And it's been a while, but all that shit seems to disappear when I'm with you. Everyone in the world can probably relate to that in one way or another. But even on the kind of the post-chorus, I cannot blame this on my father. He did the best he could for me. I think it's, and as fucked up as it all may seem, and I know it's me, there's a lot of coming to terms in this song. It's not just it's a really pretty song. Yes, it's a really pretty song, and it's, a lot of people view it as just a strict love song, but I think there's a lot more to it than that. And that was something that, again, I didn't catch that back in the day. I just heard It's Been a While, and I still remember Just the Way You Taste and stuff like that. It's been a while. I still remember The Way the Candle Lights Your Face. Like, oh, it's a love song. But there's a lot more to it than that. And it's such a cathartic love song. That's how I've always taken it. And that's all I hear now. Whenever I hear It's Been a While, I don't just hear, I do hate that It's Been a While has been almost become a meme, I mean, for God's sakes, I've made the joke twice already in the podcast. It's been a while. And I do it all the time. But it's not out of a hateful thing, because I genuinely love this song. And again, there's a reason it's Stain's biggest hit, and it had a great music video that was really fitting. Performances of it is always killer. I do think I kind of prefer the acoustic version sometimes, just because the chorus, the electric guitars are so heavy and distorted. That's been one complaint over the years that have heard people make of it. Like, oh, it's such a pretty song. And then it goes, gah, gah. I do like that. Don't get me wrong, because I like Mike Mushock's playing. But sometimes I just like listening to the acoustic version too. So those are my thoughts on It's Been a While. After such a really, again, beautiful, cathartic song, we move into another really heavy tune, both musically and lyrically. A song that seemingly is just about Aaron's struggle with his life and where he now finds himself in change. He says in the song, "If you ever had said to me before that I would lead this life that I am living now, I guess it's all so strange to feel the way I do inside and have so much that I could feel some pride for in my life. So why is it that I feel like this?" The struggles he has within himself are at odds with how he thinks he should feel. And I think that's something pretty much everyone can relate to one way or another at some point in their life. This is also the first time on the record that we hear Aaron kind of his roar vocals, as I call them, which are a mix of a kind of a yell and like a brutal scream. He has a really unique technique for doing his heavy screams. And this is a song that, again, to be brutally honest, I used to sometimes skip over. I never really liked Change all that much. But really digging into that lyric, the verse, feel like the idea of just, well, I should feel one way, but then, so why do I feel another way instead? It's very powerful. And, I think, obviously, musically speaking, it's awesome. The riff's great. But I think that's really something that I love about doing these albums that made me, is it forces me to go back and really listen to a song and see things in a different way. And Change is a great example of that. Interestingly enough, for vocalists out there who may be interested, Aaron actually used to cup the mic at times to achieve the roaring sound, which obviously is a big no-no. But in later years, his voice is powerful enough, he doesn't need to do that. Like if you see live videos of him doing that roar, he'll be like playing guitar and do it. And I'm like, dude, it's pretty cool to see. You might say he changed. Haha. I did it with another song other than It's Been a While. Gotta lighten the mood a little here, folks. So, Can't Believe, without a doubt, is the heaviest song on the record. And it just crushes from the get-go, with John laying down some impressive drum work all throughout. And it's definitely a standout track, taking nothing away from Mike's awesome riff, because I love this song. Lyrically speaking, the song is quite short and actually repeats itself. But, Aaron has some demons he's exercising in this song. There's no doubt about it. And I can really say that if you love this song, watching live performance of it is killer, because like Aaron is he's just screaming his heart out. I would love to know really what specifically this song is about. Basically, it's, I can't believe that someone betrayed his trust or whatever. Never again trusted in you. Fuck everything that you think I should be. I stand. Never again, never again, never again. It's a powerful anthem for someone who's been betrayed. And that's how I take it. If you do love this song too, you should check out the acoustic version, because it really brings out a whole new meaning when he's singing it clean. And in that bridge part, the never again, like he just sings it, and it's like, it's a whole different type of heaviness. It really is. Now, there's a few songs on this record that really affected me. And again, going back, I've realized that, okay, these songs affected me. Some of these songs affected me maybe a little more than I thought, or I can understand them a bit better now. But there's not a song on this record that affected me like Epiphany did. A song fully written by Aaron Lewis, the simplicity of the acoustic guitar and the light drums. It's such a haunting song. Lyrically, the song spoke to me when I was younger and not in a great headspace for one reason or another. I just remember putting that song on in a dark room when I would be just not in a great place, and I would just listen to that song on repeat over and over again. And what I didn't realize at the time was I was using that song to kind of purge those feelings. I use the word purge because I mean, number one, that's what I feel I was doing, because after I would have a session of just listening to music, when I would have those feelings, it always helped. It always, I don't want to say got rid of them, because we deal with those kind of things every day. But when I was in a really not great headspace, this song was what always pulled me out, was this one. And back in the MSN days, it's kind of, I can chuckle about it now, but some of my close friends would know when I wasn't maybe in a great headspace, because I'd be listening to the song on repeat, because it would show up on my MSN. It'd be like, Epiphany, Stained. And they'd be like, oh, he's listening to Epiphany. And then they'd like check back 10 minutes later, and I'd still be listening to it. And then I'd usually get a ding. Hey, you all right? Yeah, I'm fine. Why? Like, you listen to Epiphany on repeat. You all right? Like, yeah, I'm sure that Brandon has some funny stories about that, actually, now that I think about it. Be like, oh, you're in an Epiphany loop. What do you mean? Anytime you just do Epiphany on repeat, something's going on. What's bugging you? Aaron's performance vocally is one of his best in his entire career, in my opinion. I can just also think back to so many nights playing and singing this song too, which was an even more powerful way to kind of purge those feelings with this song, because I realized, well, hey, if I'm singing this, it's a whole different thing. And as I got older, I realized that we all have these moments where, as silly as it might sound, sometimes we're all just, a little boy inside that cries out for attention, or a little kid inside that cries out for attention, whatever the hell. And, it's always raining in my head. Like, just, it's such a hauntingly beautiful song. And it's one of the most powerful on the record, if not the most powerful on the record. I absolutely love Epiphany, and I can't state enough how much I love that song. A theme on a lot of these albums that made me are looking back on lyrics that I may not have really understood when I was younger and kind of see them as an adult. This is so true for Suffer, because I didn't really understand until I was older the importance of learning how to deal with kind of everyday messes or mistakes you make. You learn and you grow. It doesn't mean you need to constantly suffer. And looking lyrically, and then I come to find that everything's okay. Seen this all before, but that was yesterday. Try to walk right through the messes that I've made, and just try to enjoy the life here that I have. I think that is super powerful, and a lesson that everybody needs to learn. And it might seem really simple, but a lot of coping with, mental health concerns and issues and things like that is you're learning to cope. You're learning to, and that's why, therapy is a great tool and everything, because it gives you the tools to combat those every day and learn to live with them and learn to clean up your messes, so to speak. Not that mental health is a mess. That's a whole other thing. But it's like, if you make a mistake in life, it doesn't mean your entire life's over. You just need to learn to walk right through it and just try to enjoy the life that you have. And also the opening verse about speaking how the TV's feeding you with the anger and hate you want to hear, I think is, again, very powerful, especially from the generation of, my parents, and mostly, I'm sure you guys listening, your parents as well, kind of the news generation. It's constantly feeding that kind of stuff. And I think it's even more relevant nowadays. That line struck me a lot about the state of the world nowadays. And it's a super powerful song for that. I'm so happy that I got to go back and really break down this record internally and appreciate Suffer for what it is, which is a really powerful song that is almost hidden under a title that might seem a little misleading to me anyway. Warm Safe Place is a song that when I was younger, I understood as almost like a conversation that Aaron was having with someone on the road. He talks about life on the road. I'm married to you on this road. He talks about dealing with that. And that's kind of sort of how I took it. And I kind of just moved on. And again, being brutally honest, as much as I love this record, and I hope I'm getting that across, because I've said now there are 3 songs I used to kind of wasn't really a huge fan of. This song I always used to skip over. It wasn't a matter of sometimes I would, it's every single time I'd skip it because I just thought it was a song about being on the road and I didn't really understand what it was. And out of all these songs that I've gone back to on the albums that made me to kind of listen to and break down, I think Warm Safe Place is one of the most powerful songs that I have kind of discovered what it is and what it's really about. Yes, he talks about being on the road and everything, and it's clearly a song to somebody, but it's also like a love song. And he's talking about how it is to be on the road and being away from this person, but also, when you look at the chorus, it hit me so hard when I heard it and really listened to it as, again, not only an adult, but an adult that is in a very happy relationship with a wonderful woman who is now my wife. Through your eyes, everything's clear, and I'm at home inside your arms. This person who he's referring to is his warm, safe place. I'm assuming he's talking about his wife at the time, I would assume. I can relate to that. And I know that, Sam being that person for me and me being that person for Sam, it really hit me just what this song is. It's another song that is like, this song's for Aaron. This song it was never going to be a single. It's not structured that way. It's not even really a cult hit, I would say. It's just, this is a song for him. And looking at the second verse, there's a line that really struck me that is clearly about Aaron speaking with, again, his wife at the time, I would assume, kind of about his issues and how he communicates. And I quote, "I never learned to work things out, 'cause in my family, all we ever seem to do is shout." The amount of emotional maturity that it takes to understand something like that. And I think in life, being emotionally mature, you're always maturing emotionally. I think everybody can still learn how to deal with emotions and things like that. And that's a journey I've been on myself for, the last 31 years. But I think it shows a lot of emotional maturity to realize things like that, to realize, okay, I have this issue, whatever it is, but you can see, okay, here's where that comes from. What can I do to work on that? Hey, I communicate not so great, and I yell because that's how I learned to communicate. That's how my family always communicated. And yes, that is trauma, but also it's learning that and realizing that, okay, yes, what that thing that I do is an issue. Let's work on it. Let me work through that with you. But also, I need you to understand that, I mean the best with what I say, even if it doesn't seem that way. because this is how I learned how to communicate. And that is super, super powerful to me. And it's beautiful in its own way, not just because it's a warm, safe place. It's a love, again, almost like another cathartic love song, if you will. But also it's a really, I think, an emotionally mature song. And I am so glad that I gave this an honest listen. And I mean, I was playing this song on repeat for a couple of days after I really, really listened to it. And over the years, I would stop skipping it once I got a little older. But like, this was like, a few days ago when I sat down to kind of do this listen through to do this, albums that made me. And honestly, I've been pretty much playing this song on repeat since. It really has hit me what it means and how powerful it truly is. And song that I can't relate to all of it, but the chorus, what it is, absolutely I can relate to it. So it's powerful for that reason to me. Without a doubt, For You is a cult favorite on the record of so many people. And I know it has helped a ton of fans over the years deal with their trauma. Lyrically speaking, it's pretty straightforward what the song's about. To my mother, to my father, it's your son or it's your daughter. Are my screams loud enough for you to hear me? Should I turn this up for you? I sit here lost inside my head, remembering all the things you said. This silence gets us nowhere way too fast. By the way, I just want to point this out. All these lyrics I'm saying are off the top of my head. That's how much I love this record. I'm shocked I just did the whole first verse and chorus without even having to second guess myself. A lot of people can relate to that. Unfortunately, our generation, like a lot of us didn't have great upbringings because of our family lives. I'm forever grateful that I did. And I don't love that song for that reason, because I could relate to it, because I couldn't in that way. But I'm so glad that, everyone who had that experience, I should say, has a song like this to kind of help purge that. And you can hear when they play it live, you can really hear that when the fans sing along. And I mean, that all aside, the riff, I mean, come on, Mike Mushok bringing the heat with this one. And talking about live performances, actually, there's a killer performance of this song on YouTube from 2001, literally when the album came out. And it's at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If you look up like Stained Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2001 performance, it's killer. But also, after 2001, and the record had been out for a little while, fans started singing the bridge, which, again, to me, I take the lyrics a different way. All your insults, all your curses make me feel like I'm not a person. And I feel like I am nothing, but you made me, so do something. And I'm not going to say the rest, but the first couple of lines, I can relate to that. Again, with the bullying I was going through, I can totally relate to that. That's what I pulled from the song. That's the power that it gave me to help purge that. And as much as that's awesome, selfishly speaking, this was also the first song I played when I brought home my PRS Mike Mushok baritone guitar. And I tuned it to, because this song's in Mike Mushok uses really weird baritone tunings, but this song especially is in like a really weird tuning. So I tuned it and I jammed this song for hours because I just love the guitar work of it, the overall vibe of it. And even though I pull a different meaning from it, I can appreciate what it means to other people and why it's so powerful. Without a doubt, the most important song for me on this record, as it was the first song that was introduced Staind to me, and specifically Aaron Lewis, is the next song, Outside. It's a powerful song in any version, and I can't pick up a guitar without playing it. And there's a reason. I already spoke about the first time I heard it, but once I heard the album version, I realized it was an even more powerful song. Adding the drums and the bass and the heavy guitar in the chorus, it's like a gut punch. And it's such a brilliant song. And it's interesting about the song itself. Aaron has spoken before. It's really an accidental phenomenon. I've been playing it for quite some time. In the early days of the band, any money we made went back into the band. So 2 or 3 times a week, I would play acoustically to make money to live off of. Now, it's interesting because Outside was one of those songs that he played. However, he says, it definitely wasn't really finished. So I made up the words every time. We almost put it on Dysfunction. Then, one night on the Family Value tours, 10 minutes before going on stage, we decided to do it. There was never any thought of releasing it that way. And it's an interesting story. There's 2 interesting stories about this song. This one's kind of a fun one. He's spoken before about how he actually finalized the lyrics of Outside on stage that night with Fred Durst. He had a general outline of the song because he had been playing it, but he would always change the words up, as he said in that last quote there. The whole time he was panicking because he didn't know how the second verse and the bridge was going to pan out. The first verse and the chorus were pretty much written, but the second verse and the bridge were not even remotely finalized. And it's interesting because if you watch the video of it, you can see how much he's sweating. Aaron has said it has nothing to do with him being hot. It's because he was so nervous. He was sweating so profusely because he was nervous, because he was like, oh my God, I have to basically write a song in front of a fucking crowd full of people. So that's interesting. Is there any truth to that? I don't know. It sounds like maybe it might just be a fun story, but yeah, that's interesting, to say the least. Another kind of rather not great story about the song that Aaron has told in the past. It messed him up for a really, really long time, actually, about the song Outside. He received a letter from a fan that said he had a friend who never showed any interest in music. However, after hearing Outside, he went, bought a guitar, learned how to play guitar in general, learned how to play the song, and then learned how to sing and sing the song. He then recorded himself playing it and then proceeded to hang himself with the song playing on a loop for when his parents found him. It messed up Aaron for a really long time, and I quote, "That's not what that song was for." And I couldn't read any more letters for a while after that. Obviously, the young man had a lot going on, and it's super messed up that whatever he had going on had him go to that route. But it's a story that leads us into our next song, Waste. Waste is a super powerful song for a not so great reason. Performance-wise, it's a heavy song. It's great. Vocals are killer from Aaron Lewis, and it's just filled with pain and anger. But the real thing to talk about is the story behind the song. While they were at a show, a woman came up to Aaron, and she was really upset with him. She went on to explain that her son had killed himself, and he was a big fan of Staind. And it seems that she was kind of, I guess blaming him or them for the message of some of their music, I guess. Or at the very least wanted his thoughts on why, which obviously that is a horrible situation to be in and to have to put on someone else, especially when Aaron didn't know this guy. And Waste explores that and Aaron's feelings with it, as he had every right to feel whatever he wanted in that situation. When someone comes up to you and basically blames you for their child killing themselves, when number one, you've never met them. Number two, you don't write songs telling kids to kill themselves. Like, that's absurd. And, you know, the anger in the song is kind of hard to listen to at times when you know the meaning behind it. And as with life, you know, Aaron's had his own battles with that. And he's never taken that path. And he talks about that, you know, I felt the cold steel of my life crashing down before me. I've been there many times before, you know, but then he says, you know, fuck that, fuck them, fuck you for not having the strength in your heart to pull through. I've had doubts. I have failed. I fucked up. I've had plans. Doesn't mean I should take my life with my own hands. And he's angry. He's angry, not so much at the kid for doing it, but more so that, I mean, just he wasted his life. He threw it away. And it fills him with such sadness and anger at the life that's been wasted. And it's a heavy, powerful song. But there is a version of Aaron playing the song acoustically just a few years ago. And it's really interesting hearing him play it now, because I think he sees it a little differently, maybe. So it's interesting. We come to the final song on the record with Take It. For me, I take this song as Aaron almost having a conversation with himself, or someone who's struggling like he has. He doesn't have all the answers, and he may not ever be able to articulate them, but he has a strong message to end off this journey of a record. And I quote, "But everything that I can say to you won't help you. Everything you need is right in front of you. Just take it. To try to make it through the daily pain that you feel. Maybe tomorrow won't be so bad. I know it. 'Cause I once felt that way. Nothing I could say made it go away. I lived through this. I still feel this. I just live for tomorrow." And it's an incredibly powerful way to end off the record, because Break the Cycle, to me, that really encapsulates it. And kind of in closing overall, you know, Aaron Lewis is one of my favorite singers. And at a time in my life when I had a lot of kind of confusing feelings, he was able to say words that just made me feel like I wasn't alone and helped me understood what I was dealing with. Looking back on this record and diving into it as an adult made me really appreciate things more, specifically songs like Warm, Safe Place and Suffer, and just overall what this record means. We all have trauma and things we work through every day, but being able to break the cycle of issues in your life is what this record is about to me. And to this day, it's still such an important, powerful piece of work. Musically speaking, Mike Schmidt is one of my favorite guitarists, and I'm really missing my baritone right now because I'd love to jam some of these songs. And I just can't with my Kurt guitar because of the tunings. But Break the Cycle is kind of from a somewhat forgotten era of music in which raw emotions were on display. And it was a powerful time in life when heavier and more meaningful music ruled the airways. And people might make a lot of jokes and memes about kind of this time period. And it's just, you know, it's a little silly, but I love it. And it means everything to me for these reasons. And I cannot stress enough how happy I am that I went back and did this, because I truly discovered some great songs that I didn't really understand. And specifically Warm, Safe Place. I stress again that, like, all the years I skipped over that song, or it wouldn't really hit me because I never understood it. And then now, with where I'm at in my life, it's like, that's one of the most powerful songs on the record to me, which is just, is awesome. I love all of Stain's work. Obviously, Break the Cycle, 14 Shades of Grey, the follow-up to this record is incredible. But at a time in my life when I heard this record and for what it meant to me, it helped me so much. It's truly an important piece of my history. And Stain's record, Break the Cycle, is truly an album that made me. Thank you so very much for joining me here today on this edition of The Albums That Made Me. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed doing it for you. I always have so much fun doing these albums that made me. And it's something you'll definitely see more of in the future. And who knows, maybe I'll bring guests in to do an episode like this. Not a guest to do a breakdown of an album with me, because I already did that with Garrett, of course, with Seether's Karma and Effect, because it was such an important record to both of us. But get a guest on to talk about, a record that really meant a lot to them, and we can kind of break it down and I can hear their thoughts on it. But this is a lot of fun to do, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And of course, before I sign off here today, I need to take a second to give a humongous shout out to some of the people who help make this show possible. My Patreon supporters, my hotheads. We have, but of course, the OG hothead, my buddy Scott. We've got my boy Mo. We've got my boy Tanner. We have, of course, my homie Eric. We've got Mr. Arthur Unk. We've got Mike Quintero. We've got CM Peters. Of course, Mr. Jason Reese from Jaybird Digital Arts. Terry and Janet Hodder. Mr. Brandon Bowden from Bowden Voice. And, of course, Neil. Thank you guys so much for all of the support. You know how much I appreciate all of you. And especially supporting for the last 7 years, those of you who have been around, obviously Brandon and Scott, my parents, Jason, you guys have literally been with me from day one, and I cannot express to you how much I appreciate it. But also to, my newer patrons who haven't maybe been around quite as long, but have been huge supporters. I appreciate you so much as well. And if you're listening to this and you're not a patron, that's okay. You don't have to be a patron for me to say thank you. I appreciate you so much for listening to this. I hope that you could get some enjoyment out of it. And if you would like to support the show, you can do so by leaving a rating wherever you're listening to this. Subscribe, set up for automatic download if you can. That always helps. As well as give us a follow on social media. We have Facebook and Instagram. If you want to come on the show or you have something to say, you can always hit me up on the email at thehardershow@gmail.com. I have a Discord, and we have a lot of fun over there. So come join the Harder Show Discord. If you would like to join, just shoot me a message and I will send you a link. Or you can find the link, the permalink, in my link tree, which you can find on my Instagram in the bio. And if you want to support the Patreon, you can do so. Patreon.com/The Harder Show. We got a few different tiers. If you join at the $5 or above tier, you will get access to the Taped with Trepidation podcast, which is a horror narration podcast I do on there that I have way too much fun doing. And we've got quite a few episodes coming up for that. You get at least one episode a month, but I can pretty much guarantee you for the rest of the year, you're going to get at least 2 a month, possibly more, depending on how crazy I feel that month. So we have a lot of fun over there as well as on the Discord. So come hang out, come be a part of the Harder Show community. We're going to keep going, hopefully for 7 more years. That's the plan as of right now, but we'll see what the future holds. I'm not going anywhere. That's the plan, at least. Thank you so much again, guys. And I will catch you next time right here on The Harder Show. Take it easy, guys.